RGB lights and their color models. RGB, or red, green and blue, is a common color model. By combining different amounts of R, G and B, we can produce millions of colors. RGB uses a number range of 0 to 255. Stormworks, however, accepts inputs of 0 to 1. The other color model available on RGB lights is HSV, hue, saturation and value. The ranges of HSV are 0 to 360 for hue and 0 to 100 for both saturation and value. Head into the microcontroller editor. First we will make an RGB controller and later an HSV example. Name your controller RGB light and reduce the size. We only need 2 nodes. Change to the logic tab and add the first node, a composite input. I generally name mine comp in. And a second node, this will be a composite output to control the RGB light. So I'll name it RGB light. Go into the logic editor and we want a composite write number. Change the channel count to 3. This is 1 channel for each R, G and B values. And connect the output to the RGB light output block. Now we want 3 property numbers. You can highlight one by clicking and dragging a box over it, then pressing Ctrl C and Ctrl V to copy them quickly. Click on each property number block to open its menu and change the property names. We want the first property number to be named red, the second property number to be named green, and the third property number to be blue. We could directly connect these to our composite write, but I find it easier to add some functions to help translate the color values. Open your logic gates menu and type fx in the search bar. We want the single x function block. Click on the function block and write the function x divided by 255. Now let's do the same copy paste trick from earlier and make 2 more of these. Since we copied these after writing the function, they all have the correct function to help us out. And now we can connect each property number into its own function, and the functions into 1, 2 and 3 on our composite write. This is what controls the color of the RGB light. We can enter a normal RGB value into our property numbers, and the functions will convert our values into a number that Stormworks can interpret. To control the light with a switch, we want to use a composite switch box and a composite read on-off. Connect the comp in node to the composite read on-off and the on-off output to the composite switch box. Now we will change the RGB light node over to the composite switch box output and connect the composite write number output to the on input of the composite switch box. When the composite switch box is on, all the light color data is sent to the RGB light output. And when the composite switch box is off, no data is sent to the RGB light's output, effectively turning the RGB light off. Now we need to save the controller, call it RGB light, and I've made an example vehicle that I'll show you. Now I'll show you how to connect and configure the RGB light. Open the parts menu and search for light. Be sure to pick the RGB version. Place it down and open the parts menu and find the instrument panel. Place the instrument panel down and using the select tool, click the instrument panel to open its menu. Click the instrument 1 drop down, change the display name to light switch, select flip switch from the type drop down, and leave the channel number as number 1. Open the remaining instrument drop downs and change their type to none. Add a battery if you're not using infinite electricity. Open the parts menu again and search RGB to find our RGB light controller and place it down. Click the logic button and change to composite mode. Connect the color data input on the RGB light to the RGB light output on our controller, and connect comp in on our controller to the out signal on the instrument panel. If you're not using infinite electricity, change the logic tool type to electricity and connect everything to the battery. Click the select tool from the top menu and then click on our controller. I'm setting the red to 255, the green to 20 and blue to 255. These are just random numbers to show it's working. I'll spawn the platform in, and if I push the flip switch, the RGB light turns on. By adding the property numbers and the functions that divide by 255, we can change the numbers for red, green and blue without having to go into the microcontroller editor, and we can easily reference and copy RGB values from anywhere else. Okay, so now we know what we're doing, we can experiment with HSV mode. I want to make a light that fades, like you might find inside your car. Let's change our controller's name to HSV Light Fader, and set the width to 1 as we only need 2 nodes for this example. In our Logic tab, add a composite input and name it Comp In. Add a second composite node set as output and name it RGB Light. And I've put HSV in brackets to remind myself to change the color mode in the RGB light later on. In the logic editor, I'll separate these nodes a bit so I can focus on the Comp In node. Add a composite read on off and connect it to the Comp In. Open the logic menu and search for counter and add the up down counter. Connect the composite read on off output into the up input of the up down counter. Click on the up down counter so we can configure it. Change the increment value to 0.01. This controls the speed that our light fades in. Enable the clamp, leave the min value at 0 and change the max value to 0.7. Now we need a NOT gate. Connect the NOT gate's input to the composite read on off's output, and then connect the NOT gate's output to the down input on the up down counter. Now let's add a composite write number. Click on the composite write number and change the start channel to 3. Connect the counter's output into the composite write number and connect the composite write number's output to our RGB light node. When our light switches on, the counter will slowly count up and send only value data to the RGB light. And when the light switches off, the counter counts down, creating a fading light. Let's save the controller as HSV Light Fader and exit back to the vehicle editor. Using the same platform from before, I've removed the RGB controller, and now searching in the parts menu for HSV, I can select and place my HSV Light Fader controller. In logic mode, connect the RGB light's input to the RGB light output on the controller, and the Comp In on the controller to the out signal of the instrument panel. Click the select tool, then click on the RGB light. The first option on the light is set to RGB, and by clicking the right arrow it can be changed to HSV. You can see the light comes off and on slowly. With no data being sent to hue or saturation, the light assumes 0 hue and 0 saturation, which is white. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.